good afternoon, everybody. Shall we make a start? Is everyone's glasses full? Making everyone comfortable? You've all got... Sorry? There isn't... Oh, right, yeah. I was going to dance. I thought my talk isn't very exciting, so I'm going to dance. Distract. Well, look, firstly, thank you all for coming along today. Everyone's very busy, so really appreciate it. We're going to go through some introductions, and then really just have a general chat about the frameworks, compliance environment, what's happening, what we see, and then hopefully some of you guys got some questions for us as well. So I'll pass over to one of you guys who want to jump in and introduce yourselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you're up first, Kevin. So.
Is it me?
Yeah. Kevin.
Well,
This isn't working anymore.
We've been having some fun with the IT because we're all come from information security backgrounds.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Kevin Shinners, head up the international business for a company called A-LIGN or A-LIGN, depending on which side of the pond you're from, I guess. We do lots of stuff, but basically we are a cybersecurity auditor. We only do cybersecurity. We don't do anything else. We don't do finance. We don't do tax. We do a lot of it. We've about 4,500 clients, give or take. And apologies for the banging. But we do everything within the cyberspace. So from ISO, SOC, High Trust, HIPAA, FedRAMP, you name it, everything that is required from everything is required from a cybersecurity audit perspective, we do. And we work very closely with both Assent and AvISO to get clients ready and obviously then bring them through the audit itself.
All right. Thank you. My name's Robert Clement from Assent. Thank you all for coming today. Assent Risk Management is a consultancy company, so we offer consultancy, internal audits and training around international standards, some of the ISO standards we're talking about today, and we've been doing some work on these other compliance frameworks as well. A lot of them integrate together quite well, which we're going to talk about later on. But you'll see some of our team around today with the Assent badges, so by all means come speak to us if you've got any questions about today. We're based quite close to here, so we cover London, Essex, and really anywhere around the country now with virtual meetings. But yeah, that's us really.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So my name's Paul Stevens. I'm one of the directors at AvISO. So my background is all things ISO. I'm also, as well as working at AvISO, I'm a lecturer at Cranfield University on management systems. You won't tell by my slick presentation now, I promise you. But, and yeah, as a business, again, working closely with A-LIGN, we're very much at the coalface of the compliance environment, working with InfoSec, but also environmental health and safety, wider compliance standards. And so really today was just to come and talk about what we're seeing in the industry, what we're seeing, the patterns and what we expect to see in the future. We'll just touch on it.
This is working. Great. So as I said, we do a lot of these. We're US headquartered, but we obviously have a large international presence as well. And the challenge for a lot of clients is the fact that we don't see people using just one framework anymore. I think that is slowly starting to die. We do something called a benchmark survey every year. So we get about 1,000 companies responding back in terms of what they're looking at today, what their landscape looks like. And last year, about 9% of the companies said they had one framework. So 91% of them have more than one, which is a challenge because when we talk about SOC, ISO, High Trust, FedRAMP, whatever else it might be, all the different accreditation bodies, this is the world that we're now currently living in. And it's a struggle because if you try and do more stuff, it requires more manpower or more efficiency or ideally a bit of both. And what we'll be talking about today is the new stuff that's coming in addition to the stuff that's already there that you try and need to adhere to as well. And that's becoming a big challenge for everybody because depending on what you read, somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 cybersecurity people in Europe are missing, as in there's not enough people in the market to facilitate doing what's needed to be done. So it's trying to become more efficient in what people do and how people do it as well. And that's something which is a massively important part for us. As I said, we do this is all we do. And you're talking about clients from like SpaceX and PayPal all the way down to the 1 and 2 person shops and everywhere in between. Even though we're headquartered in the US, we've got a very substantial base outside of that as well. So we've got audit teams here, got all the teams in Asia as well, because we obviously want to cater to clients within their time zones as well. But the challenge is to what we talked about at the very start is this is all the legacy stuff. Depending on the industry you're in, depending on what your clients are looking to try and do, you have to do a lot of things today. And then more is getting added to the pile. So it's about how do we help clients to get through the full list of things, not just what they have to suffer through today, but also the stuff they have to do in the next 6 to 12 months.
Oh, well, this is some familiar faces here from one of our recent, or not so recent meetings. But Assent, I'll explain why we've got a shark. Obviously, that's related to phishing campaigns in terms of cybersecurity. I guess that illustrates quite well the relationship we have with partners like A-LIGN, with AvISO as well, that we work with quite often. We work with the ISO standards and the management systems, but we also want to provide a full solution in terms of technical controls, technical testing, and obviously the impartial certification that bodies like A-LIGN provide. Along the bottom are some of the things that we subscribe to as a consultancy company ourselves. So we know the pain that you guys go through in terms of certification and compliance. We do a lot of them ourselves. I think that gives us some really good insight as to how we can improve things and make it work for you.
Fantastic, thank you. And then, so AvISO, we've been going 15 years, and I think just to really emphasise, and we'll keep pushing this point today that Kevin made, when we started out, we saw clients that had one standard, maybe two. It's not the case anymore. And it's not just ISO now. So we've got several clients with up to 5 or 6 different ISO standards. We've grown now over the 15 years. We're working with TISAX, SOC 2, EcoVadis, B Corp. This is an awful lot to do, and it's too much for people to manage, treated as individual frameworks, treated as individual pieces of work. So we're working with a lot of companies who are already feeling like they're drowning with this, and it's looking at efficient, smart ways of addressing these compliance, or this ever-expanding compliance environment. So some of our clients there that we've supported on, and some of these are joint clients. I think AeroCloud is one that we've worked with A-LIGN. He started with 9, 27, SOC 2, and that's just a growing piece for them. So how do you build that? How do you actually map out what your compliance strategy is going to be over the next few years? I think that's a really important thing. If we can emphasise that and that alone today, that you think about the longer term with this, it's really important. Well, I was just saying the plan today is really for us to have a chat. Hopefully you guys can feed in as well. If any of you got any particular pain points that you're experiencing with what you're doing, any challenges, any questions. But the idea is really for us to stand here, have a chat, and then we'll be able to go back to the bar and you can have a drink and ask us questions then that talk about, so what we mean by controls-based auditing, some of the multi-standards audits we're looking at, and then as well the new standards. So AI is obviously seeing a huge uplift everywhere, and what that means in the world of ISO. So that's where we want to focus.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of challenges in this industry, in this area in general. The biggest challenge is the fact that you have to do lots of different things, and a lot of them repeat. It's the same underlying components that you have to keep on using again and again and again, and there's no real reason why that should be the case. Like, think of it like Lego blocks or kind of different components. So if you're looking at individual controls, a control might be, how do you keep laptops secure outside of the office space? That control is used within ISO, it's used within SOC, it's used within a variety of different controls. Yet what happens today is, if you break that apart and look at each certification separately, is you do it once with the first certification. Then you go to the second certification and you have to do the same thing a second time, show more evidence, go through the same audit process, and then have the same conversation with different control owners. Then a third time, a fourth time. There's no real reason why that should be the case. What you should ideally do is look at it from a controls-based perspective and look at the components that make up your complete set of audits or frameworks that you have to go through, and ideally reuse, kind of reduce, reuse, recycle. We hear it a lot, but you should do it here as well. There's no reason why you should have to do the same thing over and over again, and there's not really a bandwidth for people to be able to do that over and over and over again. That leads into the multi-standard audits and audit consolidation. We have a joint client who was using one auditor for SOC 1, a different auditor for SOC 2, a different auditor for 27001, and was looking to bring on another framework as well. And they were saying, we can't do this. We physically don't have enough people to keep on adding more and more frameworks. We need to try and do something else. But they didn't know what to do or how to go about it. So we helped to consolidate all of that within one view of the world, and it allowed them to just keep on reusing the same evidence over and over again. They don't have to keep on doing the same full project over and over and over again, which becomes even more difficult when you get new standards, because that's what you have to do today. And then you add in NIS 2, you add in DORA. If you've got any type of European exposure or European client base, you're in the net, unfortunately. If you're looking at AI, there's a new regulatory standard, ISO 42001. It's becoming more and more prevalent now because the market is looking for it. There's more and more ISO or AI security questionnaires out there. And at the same time, there's more of a push, whether it's the EU AI Act or anything else. It's a push and a pull situation. So people are getting pushed into having to do this without necessarily the knowledge or the guidance as to how to go about it or what's the best way to go about it. So all these things are actually the same thing, just repeated in different ways. The more that you can try and consolidate and reuse the same pieces of evidence, same pieces of controls, the easier life becomes overall, because it's not actually 2, 3, 5 different projects. It's just one master project with reusable components underneath. Does that make sense? Any questions on anything we've gone through so far? All good.
I was going to say, just to add to that bit, actually, there is only a finite amount of controls, tools, pieces of evidence you can have as an organisation to show you're compliant, whether it's information security, environmental quality. The frameworks might be growing, but what you do to manage that isn't developing at the same speed. And we've done quite a lot of work with clients where Q1 is 27001, Q2 is TISAX, Q3 is SOC 2. And by just saying, look, we're looking at the same thing over and over again, it's not just the resources, it's your teams who are being audited and asked to say a lot of evidence one week and then show the same evidence the next month, show the same evidence against the next month, which builds up bad feeling and animosity. It doesn't go down very well. So there's just emphasising that controls-based piece. If we look at something, yes, we've got a piece of evidence, right, we've met lots of our compliance pieces. We're just emphasising that is that the efficiencies you can bring into this, the time you can save, the goodwill you can create amongst your teams as well, who aren't getting that over-auditing, it is significant, and that's only going to increase. So unless the standards aren't taken on as a reactive process, each framework treated individually, it's just going to become too much, I think.
Yeah, one of the things, it's a really good point. One of the things that comes up a lot within our world is you get people coming to say, we need to do a new framework, whatever the new framework might be, because we have a client, and the client will sign with us if we can do or show that we're moving towards this new framework. So it's a very it's a knee-jerk reaction approach, it's a business-led approach, and that's necessary, it needs to get done. But at some stage you kind of run out of bandwidth, you run out of runway, and doing that doesn't allow you to be sustainable. But it's a very, very common thing that the business requirements dictate what you need to do, rather than looking at this strategically, like you'd all like to do. It's a pragmatic approach as well as a business approach. Anything that's
yeah, great. I'll kick off the next slide if we're ready. So, the previous slide we talked a lot about standards there, but as Kevin was saying, compliance is changing. We've already had some conversations in this room about how compliance and certification has to adapt to these new frameworks and this new legislation. And that's really what we're seeing, and partners like A-LIGN and us as consultancies are changing our approach to this more controls-based system. So it's not just standards now, it's frameworks, legislation, regulations that are coming in. And as you would have seen on the invite to this event, these are the ones that we're talking about. But just be interested to know from you guys, we've got some on the screen here. So DORA, how many of you guys are aware of DORA and know a bit about it? Okay, so we've got quite a bit, and that's good. What about NIS 2? So network infrastructure. Yeah, some fewer there, but still quite good. And the Cyber Resilience Act. Got that right, didn't I?
Yeah,
right?
I know.
We were testing ourselves earlier. Anyone? Yeah, so yeah, even fewer on that one. And then ISO 27001. Hopefully most, certainly our people. Good. Yeah. I'm glad our people are on board there. Yeah, and that's kind of what we would expect, I think. Obviously, 27001 has been around a long time. We're now in 2022 version. And that's a very familiar management system standard. And I'm sure you guys know there's others out there, not just information security, but there's quality, environment, safety, and the new AI one, 42001, artificial intelligence, which I think we've got a slide on later. And traditionally, that's sort of how we've built compliance and how we've certified it is as a management system. And we've had an auditor from the certification body come in to impartially audit that. The way that we approach the other requirements, like DORA, NIS 2 and the CRA, can be similar. So we can put it within a management system and we can look at it, all the controls, or what you might call the requirements in there, and categorise those as controls. And there'll be common themes that run through that. And again, we've got a slide later on about the crossovers of all these. And just like you might have an audit and a certificate for 27001, certification bodies can issue an attestation or a report or an impartial view of your compliance against those standards. So if you do need to comply with any of these and you need to prove it, so you need to prove it to customers or the supply chain, then as we were saying, it makes sense to align all this together. On there, align, very good. And not to duplicate effort, and people don't have the resources, especially many SMEs. They don't have people just sitting around waiting to do this. So the more efficient we can make it, the better. I don't know if anyone wants to go into more detail.
I'm not sure. I saw lots of you putting your hands up at 27, but also DORA and NIS. Are you getting? We get a lot of clients coming to us saying we need to prove compliance or we need to be certified to DORA on NIS, and we have to explain you can't do that. Their legislation, their regulation. So is that what you're seeing as well? That people are coming to you to prove conformity, or at this stage it's on the horizon and not sure? Okay, I've been told to stand that way because I'm not going to quite. But from our perspective, we're seeing a lot of people saying looking for certification. It's not something you can get. Same with GDPR is a question that gets asked a lot. 27001, it covers 70-80% of these. It's what we're seeing as the evidence of compliance with these other pieces of legislation and regulations. And I think there's three here. But this is just indicative of the way the marketplace is going. We're seeing more and more legislation entering the market or entering the environment, more industry-specific information security compliance. So we've got TIS Acts in the automotive. And so these are good examples, but this is a good indication of where we're heading. So expect to see more of these, more requirements coming through in the near future. I think using 27, because it's the flexible nature of the standard, it's risk-based, it allows us to build in those additional requirements. 27 says you must comply with what's relevant. Well, we're mapping those other elements into 27. So I think expect to see 27 being used as a tool more and more, not just as a prerequisite to tender, but also as a way of evidencing your compliance to a wider regulatory framework.
Yeah, this is annoying because a lot of it is just overlap with what you guys do already today. Whether you want to or not, you have to do this. And there's also what I have seen is probably the most punitive sanctions I've ever seen, and I've done this for like 20 years in an EU-based regulation. So even if you've only got one client in Germany, doesn't matter. If you breach that law, there's potential for sanctions of up to 2% of your global revenue. So this becomes quite big quite quickly. And the other massive part of this as well is for both NIS2 and DORA, there is senior management exposure. So you have to define who is the senior manager within the company, and they are personally liable if something goes wrong. Once again, I haven't seen this before. It's now taking the rule of law on a different journey. To Paul's point, these are not certified. You cannot say I'm NIS2 certified or I'm DORA certified. It doesn't exist. What we're actually starting to see, so we do a lot of the kind of internal audits for clients for these. And one of the things we've started to see is within their supply chains, they're asking clients, are you NIS2 compliant? And clients can go, yeah, sure we are. But there's no way of actually proving that. So we're actually starting to see people now asking their supply chain, are you 27001 certified as a proxy for NIS2? Because it is what NIS2 was built on. There are 10 major components to NIS2. Each one of those baseline is built and developed off of 27,001. So once again, it's the same problem, a different mask on the problem, but the same problem nonetheless, that it's an overlap of all the same controls that you're already using today, that you probably already have today, but you now have to do it for different purposes. There's additional bits around it about reporting and the requirements around reporting scrutiny, but in general, it's the same stuff over and over and over again. You get the idea. It gets a bit boring after a while because it is the same problem. It's just being framed in a slightly different way. But like if you wanted to look at the overlap of these, like it is not small. Like if you look at the share requirements, and hopefully you can also see 70 and 20 does not add up to 100, because controls are different. Everybody's client base is different. What you guys care about is different. So it can be 70, it can be 30, it can be 60. The key part of this is that the overlap across all of these frameworks is absolutely huge. If you include SOC 2 into this as well, it's about a 70% overlap with 27,001. If you are a PCI client, so payment card industry, it's about another 35% overlap. None of these are unique. You're not creating HR policies and procedures differently for every single framework that you have. It's the same set. You just keep on reusing them over and over and over again. So it should be a case you can significantly reduce the workload that you have by doing the same thing in possibly a slightly different way to what's been done historically, which may have been a bit more reactive rather than proactive.
I would say when we tried to put some slides together and we tried to put SOC 2 and TISAC, it just looked like a mess. It's just a big pile of stuff in one place. And it just goes to emphasise there is so much overlap. So if nothing else today, hopefully take away some confidence that if you're 27, you're actually an awful lot further along on this journey than you felt. And if you use that 27 effectively and use it well, you can easily add on these additional components, having a single management system, which gives you the peace of mind, the confidence, the ability to tender for work that's covering this environment. I think, and again, I'm repeating myself, apologies. If you take out each one individually, you're just going to end up with a different one each week, and it's going to become an impossible piece to manage.
Can I ask you a question? Who here does everything today with like in a consolidated way? One half hand. Okay, two half hands. That kind of counts as one together. But like it's unfortunately a very, very general problem. So if it's a consolation, you're not alone. A lot of people are looking at the same thing today, but it's reaching critical mass for a lot of companies and a lot of clients, because the most expensive cost in all of this is headcount, and hiring more people to do this. First of all, trying to find them is tough, but then if you do find them and you have to hire them, it doesn't become very sustainable. So this is becoming a very big problem very, very quickly.
For sure. And this is just looking at information security. If you put environment, ESG, energy, quality on top of that as well. And again, there's huge overlaps with those standards as well. The things you're doing, the evidence you're building, the controls you're implementing, overlap from environmental to business continuity to information security is huge. So again, we see a lot of companies, they might have quite a consolidated information security piece, but that has environment sitting over here and health and safety sitting over there. And the opportunities there to really bring that together are huge, absolutely.
And I don't mean this in a bad way, but the reason people may not be telling you this today is it may not be in their best interest to explain this to you. Because if they only do 27,001 or they only do something else, they're not going to be explaining to you the fact that it's better for you to consolidate these things and do the same thing once and reuse it multiple times. Because the next rational question would be, great, can you do that? And the answer is going to be no. So have a conversation with the people you need to have a conversation with on, does this stack up? Does this make sense? Because we have a lot of clients and they all do this. And you can almost see when the light goes off over their head where they're going, what the hell have we been doing? And why have we been doing it that way? And it just makes your life much easier going forward as well. It just becomes a lot more sustainable.
I think the thing to remember as well, with 27, it asks you to think about what you do, the risks associated with what you do, how you mitigate those risks, and show that process. The other frameworks we're looking at here today, the other ones in the marketplace, are you must have these requirements. So that's where that flexibility comes in with that standard. So, it is the framework to build your compliance piece on, thinking about it rather than just a certificate to have as a tender. And that's the main point really here. We're possibly overemphasising it, but it can't emphasise it enough, is to look at all these individually is just a completely overwhelming picture, but to understand it's nowhere near that.
And as the audit body, this may not be the right thing to say, but a lot of people don't want to do these things. You do them because you have to. It's not because you want it, because it's necessary. Some of it's necessary because it's law. Others are necessary because, like for example, SOC 2. SOC 2 is purely a US-based regulation. But if you want to do business in the US, if you're not SOC 2 compliant, you're going to get a 250 questionnaire every single time for every single client, and that's just not scalable. So you have to do it to allow yourself to scale. These are just necessary evils for a lot of people. You have to do the baseline set of IT controls, 27001 being a lot of people's baseline, but a lot of the other ones which get added onto it afterwards, they're something that you do to allow you to grow your business to grow, or obviously to meet a particular law or particular compliance. That becomes challenging when they're all treated separately. So if you look at it from a business perspective within the company, it's about how efficiently you can do this to meet those business requirements, not just now, but also into the future, because what shouldn't happen is you get a new business requirement from somewhere around the world with a new framework requirement, and you shouldn't have to go back to square one and start everything all over again. It should be bolted into what you already do. Hopefully you have 40, 50, 60, 70% of the controls already there, and you just simply be able to add to that as well, which obviously makes everybody's life an awful lot easier.
Takes away that fear and panic every time a new tender arrives on your desk.
Yeah.
You know, you've just got that little bit further to rise and go, crumbs, we've got to do all of this.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that difficult. Today it is for a lot of people, but it shouldn't be.
That's it. So there's a lot of points on here, and they don't really work with the screen like that, but it was more, if anyone wants the slides afterwards, we can send them around, make them available. But just thinking about mapping out that compliance strategy over a period of time, looking at what sector you're in, so financial services with 27 and DORA, ICT, critical infrastructure, NIS 2 and 27, having a think about it rather than waiting for these things to land on your desk as a tender is, okay, what sectors are in, where do we want to go, where do we want to move to, and planning those. TISAX was a very obscure information security standard, heavily pushed by Volkswagen and BMW. It's gone from something only tier 1, tier 2 suppliers needed to adhere to. So the story now goes that the florist outside Volkswagen has TISAX, and I don't think it's a joke. It's just exploded. But then those companies are no longer manufacturers solely for the automotive. They might be building software, which also goes into lots of different sectors. So then they're operating in the States and need SOC 2. It's that kind of thing to think about, is where do you want the business to be? Where's the market? And what are those likely frameworks that are going to appear in the future? So forewarned is forearmed, or how it is.
Right. I think we've covered that well enough, unless anyone's got anything to add. But no, let's move on.
This is your.
So the evolving AI landscape, and we mentioned the new standard, ISO 42001, for this, which is now published and is now starting to be in active use out there. So 42001, here we go, 2023. It's a management system standard, so just like all the others, and it integrates really well with 27001, 9001, all of those Annex SL type standards, which is great for us as consultants, great for taking an efficient approach to management systems and to compliance. It's a requirements standard, so those of you that love standards like we do, requirement standards are really important to us because it means you can certify against them or attest to them. There's some others out there that are different types of standards, for example, guideline standards, which while they're great to use and incorporate because it's a guideline rather than a requirement, something you could do rather than something you must do, which makes certification harder to achieve. The standard has an annex of controls, so I think most of us were familiar with 27001, information security. That's got Annex A. Currently that's 93 controls in there. This one's a little bit shorter. I think it's around 34 controls in the annex of 42001. That covers many aspects of AI, the ethics, the quality of the data, the life cycle of the system, which is a particularly interesting one, I think. So what do you do at the end of life of that AI system? And in much the same way as you do with 27001, you can exclude certain controls if they're not applicable, and you use them as part of a risk management sort of framework. The other question we get asked a lot about this standard is, who is it for? So the scope here covers organisations that develop, provide, or use AI systems. So the natural fit is someone that builds an AI application, and they're going to build in all those controls and all that risk management and that impact analysis within their product. But the standard can also cover people that provide the systems. Maybe you don't build it, but you provide it, or it's part of a wider application. I mean, we're seeing that lots with Office 365. I think someone said Canva now has some AI in it to do images or something of that nature. So products that we're already using are starting to bolt on AI applications. And if we're going to rely on that for what we deliver to users or to the customer, then we need to have some framework around that use. And lastly, the users of the AI system as well. So it could be just that you're using the system rather than providing it as part of your service. Obviously, the approaches to each of those three, the development, provision and use of systems, the way you apply the standard might be different. But just like 27001, it's fully adaptable to all kinds of organisations that are out there. In the top, so your left, the AI legislation we've mentioned there, as I'm sure you guys have seen in the news and the press, this is an evolving landscape as well. The main one being the EU, the European AI Act. That's starting to come into force now with certain dates to meet. The UK has a similar thing, and America has some similar acts as well. And by applying the standard doesn't necessarily mean you comply with those laws, but it certainly gives you a good base to start with. So you can use a management system or a standard like this to demonstrate your compliance to those pieces of legislation. I think we've gone through the key themes very briefly in terms of impact assessment, accountability, risk management, and the life cycle that I mentioned there in the corner. And so as a standard, we're feeling pretty good about it. It's early days. In terms of the UK market, UCAS announced a pilot with some certification bodies a few months ago. There's an additional standard to this called 42006, and that standard provides the requirements for certifying 42001. So I would imagine UCAS are waiting for that to be fully published before they make much progress. Although we do have in the room a certification body, A-LIGN, who have achieved ANAB accreditation.
Yeah,
so that's
correct.
the American body.
Yeah, this is one of those. So what is an accreditation body? So an accreditation body basically checks our homework. So UCAS is the main one in the UK, ANAB is the main one in the US. Usually they're pretty much in line. 27001, it's lockstep. With this, it's a little bit different. So we went in with ANAB in February of this year to become accredited. So we're the first in the world accredited for 42001. We came out in, I think, September. And we've got clients here. So to the point of developer, producer, and user, that's pretty much everybody. So ChatGPT, you're a user. Congratulations, you're in scope. But we've got clients, for example, Synthesia here in London. They want to be one of the first. They're a big AI video company. Their push is they wanted to be one of the first in the world to be certified off the back of this because they wanted to demonstrate the fact that they do take AI seriously and they want to make sure that they're compliant. We have other clients already gone through certification who are users. They're actually consultants who've gone through this as well. So they're using AI within the consultancy. Same thing. They want to demonstrate that they're compliant. Like we talked in the previous slide about some of the requirements people have are law. Some of them people have are questionnaire based and trying to avoid the questionnaires. This is kind of a bit of both. So there's definitely a growing prevalence in AI questionnaires across the market. Whether you like them or not is a different story, but they're definitely growing, and that will continue to grow as well. So that's becoming definitely a challenge for a lot of companies. But secondly, the law, as you can see here, there's a lot of laws that are being implemented right now. Once again, they're not all different. There are different names, different masks, different faces on a lot of the same things. What seems to be coming out is ISO 42001 is the main certification. There are a number of others as well, but this is the one that seems to be taking hold of the market more than others. If you do business with Microsoft, there's a regulation or a certification, SSPA, that they require to do business with them. And they have come out and they've said, if you're 42001 compliant, you don't have to do the SSPA AI equivalent. So it's becoming more normalized. On the survey that we do every year, the benchmark survey, I talked earlier on about 9% doing one framework. That's from last year's survey. We're publishing 2025's one in January, but we're kind of gathering the results now. And one of the questions we've started to ask is how many people are looking to become AI certified? And it was quite surprising. Nearly half of the respondents, and bearing in mind this is 1,000 companies, nearly half the companies said they were looking to be AI certified in the next 12 months. And nearly 80% were saying they want to be certified in the next 2 years. And that's coming from nowhere. So this is definitely something that is taking hold. There's a push-pull aspect to this as well. Part of it is more and more clients will ask for it or ask for a questionnaire, so you have to do it. And then obviously you're being pushed from a law perspective as well. So this is definitely becoming a lot more prevalent than it would be even 12 months ago. But yeah, we're fully accredited to do it with ANAB. Once UCAS is able to take auditors as well, we'll do exactly the same thing with them as well. Slight difference to this with 27001. Think of them as the same skeleton but different skins, I suppose. So instead of having an ISMS, you have an AIMS, and a lot of the controls are similar, but you kind of have to squint and twist your head to see if they're exactly the same. They're all an AI slant on them, but there's still a big similarity in terms of the language and how it approaches 27001 and 42001 as well.
No, I think still the rest of the business that's the AI, but so clients today tangible information for international law for even to drive back what's the rest of that and the tangible.
Yeah,
is
absolutely. So I think in general, you're not going to stop the risk. It's mitigating or managing it and knowing where it is more than anything else. Like even if you look at, so let's take something very basic. So let's look at HR and hiring procedures. If you're using AI within that, there are proven cases that there is racial biases built into that. And there's been a lot of evidence around this. There was one study that was done in the US a number of years ago where they took out any relevant factors to race, ethnicity, religion, anything like that, and it still proves there was a bias because they still had the address. And then AI was taking the addresses within a certain correlated area and creating a bias off the back of that. So even something which is as basic and rudimentary as, well, using AI to screen your potential candidates, that can actually have impact as well. So, and that part of this is, think of it like 27001. Like a lot of people here obviously know 27001. If you don't know what 27001 is, it gives you a framework it gives you a language to talk about. It gives you something to frame a frame of reference against what you do and how you do it. For 40001, like we went through this with ANAB, we were the first to go through it with them. They were asking questions as to what to do. And we were asking questions as to what to do as we went through it as well. And we brought Synthesia through as the first client through the process, basically to see what broke. Probably shouldn't be saying that, but that's how anytime you're going through an accreditation process, you have to bring a first client with you and basically check everything as you go. And we just needed to make sure that it held water, that it actually did what it was supposed to do. So it gives you a language, it gives you a framework, it gives you a point of reference to look towards, and just think about things in a slightly different way. But you're not going to eliminate the risk. You can certainly mitigate it and manage it, but if you're not aware of the risks in the first place, then that's probably the worst place to be. It's the whole unknown, the known knowns and unknown knowns. It's one of those situations of just being aware of those situations and how they may be creating biases within the company, or how they may be taking data that may be privileged, or something which is very, very secure, or should be very, very secure, and people not knowing where not to put that. Like, people mightn't be aware that ChatGPT, if you've got the free version, anything you put in there, everybody gets it. If you get the professional version, there's more restrictions around it, but it's still not fail-safe. So a lot of this is just about building that language and building that culture internally to make sure people are aware, and moving away from it's the CISO's job or it's the head of IT's job, whoever's responsible, and if something goes wrong, it's their fault. Well, actually, anybody that's using it, it's their fault. And I don't mean fault in a blame perspective, but everybody's got a responsibility. And you see some companies who say, it's okay, we don't use ChatGPT internally. Yeah, you don't, but your employees are actually using it within their own accounts to do work stuff. So maybe you should be thinking about that as well. So a lot of this is just, whether it's a law company or something else, a lot of it is just building that awareness, that language and that culture.
I think, just to add to that, if I may, it's with ISO, it's risk-based. So you've got to think about it in the context of your organisation doing what you do.
Yeah.
So you might have two companies that both look at the same risk. One sees it as very low, limited mitigation, quite happy to accept it. Same risk, different company, completely different treatment, completely different controls. And that's where all ISOs, I think, vary from a lot of these other frameworks, which are just show and tell. You must have these requirements, no matter what you do or how you do it. So consider both of those when you're developing those systems.
Well, I'll just add to that. The important thing for me is the impact assessment there. And as usual, these standards are not very specific in how you should apply them. As Paul just said, it's about the context of your organisation. And I'll just point out the impact assessment and actually other areas of the standard. Consider the impact to individuals, to groups of individuals or societies, and to organisations. So you've got three different aspects to consider. But obviously the impact will be very different, whether it's a law firm or a training company or software company or whatever it is. So it's a framework, but you've got to really put the work on top of that to make it useful for you.
The more you put in, the more you get out. Yeah.